After Paul Ryan retires, Freedom Caucus has power in choosing. Washington, the race for the next Speaker of the House is on, and a relatively small group of hardline conservatives in the chamber will have significant say over who replaces Representative Paul Ryan next year. That's if Republicans are able to keep their majority in November. The House Freedom Caucus, a group of roughly 36 conservatives, have the ability to stop a candidate from getting enough votes for Speaker as long as they vote in bloc. Representative Mark Meadows, R-N.C, the chairman of the Freedom Caucus, told USA Today he certainly can see the Freedom Caucus endorsing a specific candidate, but he cautions, that won't be for a while. Whoever it is, the new speaker will have to win over the support of the hardline faction of the Republican Party, and that gives the House Freedom Caucus power to make some demands. In order to be elected speaker, the candidate must get votes from the majority of the House, which means Republicans can't afford dozens of defections. Ryan announced Wednesday he would retire at the end of the year because he wanted to spend more time with his family. The Wisconsin Republicans' decision, which he told members more than 6 months before the November midterms, has forced a conversation about who will replace him. The top two names being thrown around for Speaker are both part of Ryan's current leadership team, Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy, R. California, and Majority Whip Steve Scalise, R. Law, though Scalise has said he won't run against McCarthy. But he also told Politico last month that he might run under the right circumstances. Members of the Freedom Caucus know their power and are prepared to wield it, though they're still trying to figure out exactly how. Meadows said there's no specific list of demands at this point, but he wants the new speaker to promise to tackle a very broad range of issues including immigration, the deficit and deregulation. And of course, Meadows said, it wouldn't hurt to have some of his guys put into positions of power. I think having Freedom Caucus members in chairmanships and broadly represented in terms of the committees and the policy work that is important for the American taxpayer, is appropriate, Meadows said. Freedom Caucus member Representative Warren Davidson, R. Ohio, said he absolutely would like to see commitments to give conservatives more positions of power. Freedom Caucus members and conservatives in general are underrepresented in leadership, at every level, and that would include the other roles besides Speaker. You know, Majority Leader, Whip, the other conference positions, Davidson said. Freedom Caucus member Representative Dave Bratt, R-V, told USA Today he'd like his group to come up with a list of specific conservative policies that the next speaker would have to commit to pushing for. Some issues on Bratt's list: spending cuts, entitlement reform and immigration enforcement. The next speaker has to just do what we promised the American people for decades, Bratt said. The Freedom Caucus' ability to withhold votes as a unit has placed them in a position of power over the last two speakers, too. Their revolts against former Speaker John Boehner of Ohio were a major factor in his resignation in 2015. And before Ryan became Speaker, he promised the group that he wouldn't bring up immigration legislation that did not have the support of the majority of the Republican Party. That commitment has been a major reason compromise immigration legislation has not moved this year. Bratt said he'd like the new speaker to promise to hold a vote on a conservative immigration bill introduced by Representative Bob Goodlatte, R-V, chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. Despite being released in January, the bill has not been able to get enough support from Republicans, some of whom are facing tough races from Democrats, to be brought up for a party line vote. It's demands like that which could end up hurting Republicans' chances of holding on to their majority in the House, said Mark Harkins, a senior fellow at the Government Affairs Institute at Georgetown University. If the party leadership commits to a vote on a hardline immigration bill with no support from Democrats, moderate Republicans could be in even more trouble come Election Day. The Freedom Caucus has a calculation to make, Harkins said. The calculation is, are we going to stick to our ideological purity and therefore make it harder for us to keep our majority? Or are we going to keep the majority so we can at least maybe get a portion of what we want if not everything? McCarthy, the number 2 Republican, is currently the most likely pick for Speaker. He's been raising loads of money for the party and is close to the president. McCarthy has run for Speaker before, but conservatives had concerns about him, so he dropped out at the last minute after it was clear he wouldn't get the required votes. Since then, he's been working to repair his relationships with conservatives. If he chose to run, Scalise, the number 3 Republican who nearly died in a shooting over the summer, could have more clout with conservatives. Before becoming majority whip, Scalise led the powerful Republican Study Committee, the largest faction of conservatives in the GOP conference. Scalise has also been bringing in cash for the party. There's also the possibility that the Freedom Caucus could run one of its own candidates, which Davidson said he'd like to see. But Meadows has said he's not interested and no other names have been seriously floated. And of course, the race to lead the Republican Party could not be for Speaker, but instead for Minority Leader, if Democrats are able to take back the House in November. Democrats need to flip 23 seats in order to take the lower chamber. A Democratic majority is a real possibility. History shows the party in power naturally loses seats during midterm elections, and Republicans are fighting against a controversial president and high levels of Democratic enthusiasm.